Welcome back, PlayBASIC coders. Let's check out the latest build of PS3D and have a quick chat about what bugs have been fixed as a byproduct of this. So, while expanding the scene to add, we've got ambient light and fog, a couple of things became prevalent. Particularly as I added a bunch of like corridor-like rooms. What would happen before is you get all these little misrendered pixels in these polygons, because the ground, how the polygon filler handled the ground and the overlapping of ground, it was potential for the last pixel of a previous row to overlap the next pixel of the next row. So if the two intensities were pretty much the same, you didn't notice it. And often they kind of are, actually. Until you have strips where the strips happen to be dark on one side and then bright on the other side, and vice versa. So you see these bright flickering pixels on the end of some of these polygons. Here is completely subdivided, by the way. So that's why I built this scene. That's where I noticed the problem much more. You would see it before when you walked out on the terrain. Oh, it's up here somewhere. Now, it's not perfect, but it looks a lot better. There's kind of flickering in that between pixels. What you'll see occasionally, if I turn the fogging off, you'll see where the subdivision, two meshes of subdivision sit beside each other, like we just saw there. So if we can make it happen, there it is there. When we subdivide one of the edges, we end up with two new edges. And that point doesn't necessarily fall exactly on the old point once it's projected. There's a bunch of inaccuracies that can occur in this stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of a byproduct of doing this subdivision approach, but it's okay. Turn the ambient light back on, fog. I did add a bit of a 2D collision to this thing here too, so the camera can't push through those walls. It's very rough, like it's not well done. I wrote one of these, geez, it was 20 odd years ago now, for Dark Basic, that had a bunch of you could glide and slide off rectangles and wall boxes, axis aligned boxes primarily, cylinders, spheres, cones, and a few other things. And it's one of the only bits of code that I'm bummed that I still haven't got. I've got that, there's an executable of that demo I found, but in terms of the approach, I've tried to replicate it as I remember, but I think this method's simpler, but it only supports 2D at the moment. So you can sort of go over the top because it lets you, it just stops reacting when you're above the box or the region in this case. Anyway, but when I was doing this, I noticed a few other bugs. So we had the render bug from the subdivision, which was really it was mostly notable when we're using shaded textures, shaded polygons like we are here. Turn that off. You would still see it because each polygon here has some ground coordinates, like up at the top there, down the bottom there, that are blended with the texture color. And the other one that I just discovered tonight was that when I positioned the camera at certain locations, it would just crash. And it turned out to be Actually, I wasn't actually that sure what it was, but it turned out to be a divide by zero. So that was, once you realise what was happening, it's like, oh, okay, fair enough. And that was in the subdivision. Because the subdivision occurs in 3D space, and like the polygons laying across, like some points are positive and some points are negative, and the midpoint could have just perfectly fallen on top of, just happened to be zero. So when you divide by the Z to project it, yeah, it broke. This is all just ran as one pass, by the way, so we haven't got separate floor and then separate walls. And all of the walls have all of the shared walls in them. So we're rendering heaps of stuff we don't need. You can see it there, actually. I mean, see that? I should, hang on. Come on, break, dude. So what I'm saying is that these are two rectangles. This brown one and this kind of, well, let's change the colour. This purpley one here on where the mouse is, and this blue one here. You can see them there, actually. They just happen to sort out of order in those frames. That means that everywhere we look, there's extra polygons being rendered in the scene. We don't need them. They're not visible from any point here. If we go inside this thing here, we'll see it. We can't because the slide collision is stopping us from doing that. Typical, isn't it? Typical. We've got a floor too, but the floor's a back face at this point, so it's not really costing us anything to render that. The floor here is just each polygon here is just an object separate. So it just made a little plain object, and because that's a 4 vertex polygon, it's a quad, and we've got subdivision activated, the renderer just cuts it up for us, which makes it a lot simpler than doing that stuff yourself. Like, it's not that was complicated, and it isn't complicated. It's just another chore that was laying on your back when you did this stuff. One thing I actually was looking forward to running again was K-Man's 3D demo from years ago. I had this memory about it used Vertex Objects cubes. It uses Vertex Objects, yes, to do all the rotation stuff, but then it just draws the faces manually. It even subdivides those faces as well, which I thought was pretty fascinating because I didn't know any of that. Like, oh wow, that's cool. Yeah. Anyway, so this week we'll fix 2 pretty sizable bugs actually. They were both crashes. Well, second one was a crash, and first one would just make the rendering look really strange when you had lighting enabled or shade texturing enabled. So that's been good. I don't know what you can do with it, but I'm sure you can find something creative to make out of this. I would like to get the visibility stuff. That'd be a fun addition. Last year I really was thinking about making like a little boomer shooter or something like that out of this to have some, some MD2 models running around. If I could find some characters that were kind of cool, and just have them animated, running around doing some stuff, and that'd be cool. Yeah, that would be suitably retro and something crazy for people to point and stare at, I think in terms of the current level of the project, I think we're about done. I can think of other things to add, and I probably should tackle some of those things. One of them is a way of eliminating, like generating an object and then having a way of deleting faces from it. That would be good. The other one was actually having a way of merging objects together. So these floor tiles, they're all separate objects in the render system. Each object just has four vertices but one face. Clearly that's not very efficient. It's just it did that because it was convenient. But yeah, if you had a merge thing for meshes, that would be kind of neat, I think. Grab a bunch of vertices, grab mesh, and grab a bunch of objects and stick them all together. Form one large object out of the many small ones. That'd be kind of cool, I think. And it eliminates a bunch of work, and it's kind of how you would do things anyway. The other things are things like, having a lighting feature, so you could take the mesh and apply, the colour's very dark, take each mesh and apply light from a point of view. So you have like dynamic lights. Pretty simple stuff, but fair enough. I'm sure if you pick the right concept and you can make something sort of cool and fun out of it, that'd be fantastic. I'm just happy that we're not crashing anymore. That's the main thing. I did notice the crashes before. Well, I just wasn't sure what was causing it. Today it was just a process of running through and going, okay, is subdivision causing it or not? Turned out that it was. This is where subdivision turned off. And for a lot of polys, you see there, the main noticeable ones are right around the camera. So you could ease off the subdivision a lot. Like here, I've got it set to, I think it's 1.5, which means that for each surface that's putting in front or into the translate mesh to scene stuff, it runs through and looks at the depth of the polygon. If it's within one of the internal criteria, it comes up with a multiplier for how much subdivision that face might require or will be given. And you can scale that for each object. So you can scale it down or up. So we'll just give you an example of that. So our little population thing here for a simple sort of 2D map is what you'd expect. There's a bunch of data statements that just run through the strings, and each minus sign becomes a box in this case. What we're thinking of here, our subdivision. So the floors are 1.5. That's the default amount of subdivision. So that's probably way too much. So we could go down to half of that. And the thing that creates the cube, let's go to doubling that. We don't really need that because it turns out that all you need is like a small amount of subdivision for those cube faces to stay pretty well prospectively correct. Turn this back on. Now we've got lots and lots of polygons for that cube. Way too many. And you can tell, like we could say it's way too many because here each face is down to almost a handful of pixels, and that's not going to be good for anyone. The floor, see, the floor is almost rarely subdivided there. We've gone way too low actually. For that particular one. Try again. I think 75% tends to work pretty well. Internally, I can't think what the zones are now. It's like if you're up near the camera within about 1,000 units of the camera, that's the highest level of subdivision. It's like 3 layers or 4 layers. So yeah, that will turn one polygon into, I mean, ideally you're looking at one polygon becomes 64 polygons. That's a lot. And then that gets put into the scene buffer, is sorted down, etc. So you're generating a lot of extra work for the renderer to do for not much benefit. There you go. So it turns out that we probably don't need huge amounts of subdivision for the floors unless they're near the camera. And the same goes for the walls. The walls they're being sampled way too much. We don't need that much subdivision. It's crazy. The way ambient light works too, by the way, it's really just the object color multiplied by a particular, whatever color you set as the ambient light, and the fade off is again on the depth of the object. So it works best fading into black. What you'll see modern games do is they use alpha blending to blend new objects as they come into a scene, particularly as they change lodge levels and those kind of things. Not so much in classic sort of, 90s, early 2000s games though. It's classically software rendered stuff. Yeah, so we could probably go to one more try at that, just for curiosity's sake. Let's have it about 85%. Yeah, so now the one we're standing on now is into 16 by 16. Sorry, 16 polygons, 4 by 4. So it's 2 levels of subdivision. That's probably about all you would need. For something like a Mario game or that kind of stuff, you get pretty decent looking perspective and hardly any of the cost. Well, I shouldn't say hardly any of the cost, but there's a fair cost, but the rest of it comes down to how creative you want to be when you're putting something together. Yeah, anyway. Crazy. How many faces are in that thing? So the poly count for this scene is 7,400 visible faces. We'll try and isolate one just to get an idea of how many polys are in this stupid thing. If it's 16 by 16, that's 256. Is it? 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, it is. So that's a lot of polys for that. When you get nice perspective, I mean, it's at that level, it's almost no point going to calculate really perspectively correct. I mean, it sounds silly to say that, but yeah, like it doesn't look linear to me. And you can see linear artifacts in here when you get too close to these objects here. Like this torus, it's warping around a bit. But it's not subdivided, that object. So you could, in theory add a bit more or bump the number of rings around the object. That's probably the easy option for a torus, and then sort of substitute the object as you go further away from the camera. So have two of them, the high detail version and the low detail version. Here everything's just one detail. Once it's created, that's it. It's just the same. Alright, that's about it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And hopefully we'll post updated builds of all this stuff tomorrow, I guess. Till then, see you next time. Bye.